Hi everyone, Maura here from St. Louis Birth Rhythms, and welcome to my video on nutrition basics for pregnancy. If you don't know me already, I'm a music therapist, doula, and childbirth educator, and one of my jobs is to connect people with resources they need to have comfortable, informed pregnancies and births. And today I'm going to be talking with you about basic nutrition for pregnancy. Now, I'm going to point out that in this video, I'm not making any diet plans for you, but helping you understand some basic information to help you use nutrition to stay comfortable and stay healthy during pregnancy. If you know already, or if you realize throughout this video that you really need somebody to help you with a specific plan for your health needs, then feel free to reach out to me. Happy to connect you with anyone that can help you. When you're pregnant, it's really common for you to start thinking about you and baby almost immediately. And diet and nutrition can be one thing families see as something that they have power over to impact the health of their child and themselves for their birth. But there's a lot of confusing information out there. I know for myself, I grew up with something called the food pyramid. In addition to not really putting the emphasis on vegetables that it needed to have, it sure was hard to imagine that when you were making a plate for yourself. And so a few years back, the government changed to something they call My Plate, which is a lot easier to visualize. Now, I will point out that there's a lot of debate whether all of those foods should be included. Harvard School of Public Health, for example, has a very similar graphic, but instead of a cup of dairy next to the plate, they have a glass of water. And that was based on some of their own research, and we'll actually be talking a little bit about that as we go along. Now, one of the most confusing things about any eating habit is that the results from any particular routine can be different across individuals. And that's really discouraging to not get the results that you wanted or not get the results that your friend got when you're following the same diet or routine. And what happens is that your response to a particular plan depends on your health history. It depends on what medications you are on or have been on in your life. It depends on your genetics, and it depends on what kinds of things are going on in your gut. And so I want to take a moment here to talk about gut health. A lot of people don't really understand the importance of gut health or even know that it's such a thing. But the bottom line is that if your gut health is poor, then you're at a much higher risk for a wide range of health problems. And those include physical health as well as mental health problems. Your ability to absorb nutrients is limited. Your brain might not work well. You might have brain fog, depression, or anxiety. Your skin will show signs of not being well nourished, and your immune system won't be working the way it should. So as you can see, gut health goes far beyond whether you have acid reflux or whether your tummy gets upset when you eat certain foods. Improving your gut health during your pregnancy and even before it is worth it because both parents pass their gut health onto their baby during birth. And there's some easy ways you can tell that your gut health needs some attention. If you have an autoimmune condition of any kind, if you regularly have loose bowels or usually go several days without having a bowel movement, if you've noticed that when you try to improve your diet, you get sick, you get flu-like symptoms or hives or rashes, this is not an exhaustive list, so be sure to read up on this more. All of these are indicators that you have poor gut health, and this is where you definitely need to seek additional help to customize a diet that's right for you. Now, the good news is that the gut is one of the fastest healing parts of our body, so when we make changes, we often notice a significant difference pretty quickly. So now, why is food so important? Well, we've known for almost a century that diet makes a huge difference in how our bodies grow, develop, and function. And this makes sense if you think of food as building blocks for your body. You can't build a house out of chips and licorice, and you can't build a body out of one either. And while our bodies are made to handle the stresses of pregnancy, it's very similar to being an elite athlete. You have so much new cell growth, you have increased fluids, and an increased oxidative stress when you're pregnant. These are similar to some of the things that athletes go through, and they can't continue to function if they don't feed their bodies well. The right food can go a long way to helping you feel comfortable during your pregnancy. Now, if you are lacking in nutrients during your pregnancy, then the nutrients that you eat will go to your baby first. If that is also deficient, your body will start giving to your baby from your bones, from your tissues. And so this will lead you to feel weaker and sicker. You'll be more at risk for illness during your pregnancy and have a harder time recovering from the pregnancy. And there can be an increased risk that you could go into labor too early because your body's not getting enough nutrients to keep the pregnancy going. Now, I want to be clear. I am saying this to empower you, not to scare you, just to get you to understand how important this is, because when we know better, we do better. There's so much power behind nutrition, and simple changes can go a long way to helping you and your family. One more bonus about eating well when you're pregnant is that your baby tastes what you eat when he or she swallows amniotic fluid. So if you're eating a lot of fruits and vegetables and healthful foods, your child will be familiar with those flavors even before he or she is born. And this is called metabolic programming. And it continues as you breastfeed your baby because, again, your milk changes flavors based on what you've eaten. And when your baby starts solids at 6 months, you can continue to give your baby these flavors so your baby's used to a variety of foods. And this really sets the stage for adventurous and healthful eating as your child gets older. Now, you can expect there's going to be some times when it's not going to seem as easy. I have a 5-year-old right now, and he is really trying to tell us no to all the healthful foods that we're offering him. But it is more behavior-based than flavor or texture-based. And so he really eats a lot more fruits and vegetables than he would have if we hadn't been doing this work all along. And I have no doubt that as he grows more aware of his body and how he feels when he eats healthfully, he will continue to choose healthful foods. So after this video, if you're wanting to read a little bit more about some of the things I'm talking about, you can feel free to check out the work of Dr. Brewer. Now, Dr. Brewer worked with low-income women, and he was able to eliminate preeclampsia in his practice when his clients followed the diet he developed. It's easy to find details of the diet online, but I'm just going to put out a few notes here. Firstly, he was working with low-income women, and so some of the things that are included on his acceptable foods are foods that probably wouldn't be advocated for now. He does favor a lot of canned foods, and canned foods tend to be less nutritious because to safely put food into cans like the ones we get at the grocery store, you have to kill the food. Now, Dr. Francis Pottinger was a researcher from the early 20th century. His work started with nutrition in cats and looked at the effects of different kinds of food on their development across several generations. And then he used his findings with humans to show similar effects. Around the same time was a dentist named Dr. Weston A. Price, who was traveling the world looking at indigenous populations and seeing what changes happened when they started adding modern processed foods into their diets. And now we have Dr. Robert Lustig, who's educating the public about the extremely high amounts of sugar in our modern diet and how that's impacting our health. Each of these people were focused on very particular elements around nutrition, but all of their work, all of their diets had the effect of being anti-inflammatory diets. They all recommended eating whole, nutrient-dense, real food and avoiding processed food and sugars. And so that's going to be a lot of focus of today's video. Now, I've narrowed my information down to 8 basics during your pregnancy. So let's get started. The first tip is to remember to keep your caloric intake up. I know a lot of moms are worried about only gaining a certain amount of weight during their pregnancy, but Dr. Brewer found that if your calories are too low, your body will not use protein for building your placenta and helping your baby because it'll have to use the protein as calories. So you want to keep your calories up to feed your baby. Now, I'm not a fan of counting calories. There might be situations where that's appropriate. I encourage my clients to, at the very least, eat to hunger and plan to be hungrier when you're pregnant. And so that means carrying around healthful, nutritious snacks with you at all times. Avoid foods labeled low fat, processed foods, and simple sugars, and baked goods and candy. Another thing that your body needs all the time, and especially when you're pregnant, is salt. Now, if you have a heart or kidney condition, please consult additional help to figure out what is best for you. But for the rest of us, our body uses salt to pull fluids into circulation so they can be used and passed on. Salt affects your electrolyte balance, which is important for a variety of normal functions in your body. You can use your taste buds to determine how much salt you can eat, and you may be attracted to more salt during your pregnancy, and that's okay. Now, what kind of salt you use is important. Regular iodized salt is stripped of its minerals, it's bleached, and it has anti-caking agents in it. And of course, it's used in most packaged foods and at fast food restaurants because the iodized salt is so cheap. But there are better alternatives. There's sea salt, there's pink Himalayan salt, and there's Celtic salt. And you'll spend a little bit more on these salts, but you'll notice a big difference in the taste, and your body will get more out of it. And so you can find these salts in specialty grocery stores. You may even be able to find it in your local grocery store. But if you can't, you can always look online and find these kinds of salts. We lose salt in our sweat. We lose salt when we sleep, exercise, or in extreme hot. So keep those things in mind as you're going throughout your day. And you may be attracted to more salt, especially if you're keeping up on drinking water. Now, one thing women seem to know a lot about is to drink plenty of water when you're pregnant. And the reason for that is that dehydration is the leading cause of preterm labor. When you're pregnant, your blood volume goes up by 50 to 60%, and that extra blood is used to help move fluids around the body instead of letting them settle in your legs or feet, for example. At least half your body weight in ounces is recommended and safe. So if you weigh 120 pounds, that would be 60 ounces. You actually will probably find that you want and need more. That's okay. It would be really unusual to get too much water unless you're forcing yourself to drink when you're not thirsty. Now, there are people out there who go entire days without having water or have maybe just one glass and they don't feel thirsty. And that is a case of somebody having lost their thirst. They're dehydrated, but the communication between the brain and the body isn't working anymore. And so this would be a case where you might get some professional help on ways to safely get your brain and your body connected again and get that communication going. Water takes up room in your stomach, so plan to drink your water between meals and snacks so that when it comes time for your meal or your snack, you have room to keep taking in enough calories. You can experiment with putting fruits, veggies, and herbs in your water to infuse flavors. And some common ones that people try are cucumbers or strawberries and mint, lemons, limes, watermelon, any kind of combination that you want. You can get really creative with this. Find a strategy that works best for you. You could set a timer that reminds you to drink water. Some people drink more water when they use a straw. You could keep a bottle of water with you all the time, maybe even a large bottle. You can even use a sticker chart if you really want. Of course, avoid juice, soda, and sweetened drinks of any kind, and limit your coffee intake because it makes you lose so many fluids, and really the caffeine's not very good for you or your baby either. Keep eating a diet that's high in fruits, vegetables, and other plants. Vegetables are the most nutrient-dense sources of carbohydrates, and your body needs these kind of carbohydrates. There are a lot of plant-based foods that provide calcium, which we'll talk about more in a bit. They also have lots of vitamins, minerals, and high fiber content. Vegetables in particular are what we call prebiotics. That means they feed the healthy bacteria that's in your stomach, and so they can promote your gut health. And it can be so easy to add fruits and vegetables. You can try adding a mini salad with breakfast. Add leafy greens to smoothies for a breakfast or a snack. You can make it a habit to have fresh fruits and vegetables with every meal or snack. And if you didn't know, they even put fruits and vegetables in a capsule. And if you're interested in learning more about that, let me know. I'm happy to get you connected with some resources. Next, you want to make sure that you eat a diet that's high in protein. Now, protein builds the placenta and reduces the risk of preeclampsia and other complications during pregnancy. Of course, you want to make sure you're getting plenty of nutritious calories so the protein can be used properly. And another effect of having enough protein is that you have less sugar cravings. Now, here are some great sources of protein that our bodies can use. Eggs, and I'm talking about the whole egg. And a pastured egg is the best egg. If you're not familiar with that term, a pastured egg is from a chicken that's been ranging free or roaming free on a farm or in somebody's backyard. So if you have connections with somebody who has a farm or chickens in their backyard, that would be an example of a pastured egg. If you're a meat eater, you want to invest in the highest quality meats you can get, so like grass-fed beef, wild salmon, and organic pastured chicken. And you can also add grass-fed gelatin to smoothies or drinks for extra protein, and that's also great for gut healing. And sprouted beans and sprouted nuts are also great sources of protein. Now notice I said sprouted. I don't know if you've ever heard of that term before, but this is a food group where some of the sources we usually go to are not bioavailable. That means that the nutrients are in the food. We know that from testing that we can do in labs, but for some reason the body doesn't absorb them and use them. Beans, nuts, and legumes are the most common example of this. These are the seeds of the plant, and the plant depends on them to survive and be able to pass through a body so they could replant themselves again after being eaten. So many people have trouble digesting beans, for example, for this exact reason. Now, when you sprout a bean or a nut, that bean or nut lowers its defenses because it thinks it's being planted, and the nutrients become bioavailable to us. So when eating a bean or a nut that has been sprouted, you actually get the nutrition from that food. And it's easy to find beans and nuts that have been sprouted, again, at a specialty grocery store or online, or you may even look into how to do it yourself because it's a really easy process. Now, while we're still on the topic of protein, I want to say that you want to avoid protein powders. Most of them are isolated, they don't have a complete protein profile, they might be synthetic, and if you just want something that you can add to maybe a smoothie to increase the protein, you could use gelatin powder. To get the right amount of protein every day, include a serving of protein each time you eat. So every meal and every snack should have at least one small serving of protein. And we want you to eat a lot of good fats. Now, when I was growing up, I heard a lot about fat, but the way they talked about fat back then, all fat was bad and low-fat diet was all a craze. Well, now we're learning that there's a such thing as good fats and that our body actually really needs these good fats to function. Our body uses fat to build and protect the brain, to build cells, to help us absorb vitamins, to make hormones, to feed your skin and protect your organs. And it does this for you, but it also does this for your baby too. And when you're eating healthful fats, you will feel more satisfied with your meals and snacks, and you'll feel less attracted to fast food, processed foods, or sugary sweets. There are healthy sources of fat and not so healthy sources of fat. And some healthy fats include avocados, sprouted nuts, pastured whole eggs, coconut oil, and cold olive oil. And there are a lot of easy ways to add healthy fats to your diet, like adding a spoonful of coconut oil to hot drinks, smoothies, soups, or stews. You can use olive oil mixed with balsamic vinegar as a salad dressing. You can make your own salad dressing using avocados, and you can find recipes for that online. You can use olive oil as a substitute for butter. And you can have sprouted and roasted nuts on hand for a quick snack. Of course, avoid fats that come from fast food, pastries, candy, and chips. Now let's talk about sugar a little bit. Sugar, plain and simple, is a toxic substance. We all know that sugar has no nutrients, but what a lot of people don't know is that sugar actually robs the body of minerals when it's eaten. It affects your hormones, your insulin response, your energy levels, and it can create dehydration, and that's not even an exhaustive list. This goes for any source of sugar, like agave and other sugar substitutes. As I mentioned, using healthy proteins can help you with sugar cravings. If you are having sugar cravings, because honestly, most people are addicted to sugar, you can have whole fruit in moderation to help satisfy those cravings. Now, keep in mind that I want you to eat the whole fruit and not juice. The fiber in the fruit controls the insulin response. So you can also keep an eye to what are the most fibrous fruits, like berries, oranges, but melons don't really have as much fiber in them. Now, some foods that aren't even sweet are used by the body like sugar, and those could be bread, rice, crackers, other grain-based foods. They create an insulin response in the body just as if you had eaten candy or pastries, and they're best avoided as much as possible. Lastly, we want to talk about dairy. Most of the dairy we eat is not bioavailable as a source of calcium. There's calcium in it, but our body doesn't really use it for our bones and for our bodies. Additionally, most of the dairy we eat is pasteurized, and the pasteurization process kills enzymes that normally would help us digest dairy. And so it becomes empty calories as well as an aggravating food for the rest of the body. Raw dairy is an exception to some of this. New research is showing that raw dairy, when it's treated properly, is actually very safe. And by treated properly, that means farmers and anyone handling the milk ensures the containers are clean and takes steps as they're milking the cows to make sure that the conditions are clean. On your part, if you're looking to try raw dairy, you would want to make sure you know where it comes from. A good source might be a farmer at a farmer's market, and a farmer that's there often and is already established in the community. A not so great source would be some stranger's garage. But if you don't feel comfortable trying raw milk, you don't have to have that. There are lots of non-dairy sources of calcium that are bioavailable. Sources like sprouted almonds, cooked bok choy, Brazil nuts, broccoli, collard greens, kale, black olives, blackstrap molasses, sardines, and bone broth. Now you want to make sure you're also getting adequate magnesium and vitamin D, and chances are you may need to supplement these, especially if you're living in the Midwest. And people always ask about yogurt because they know that it has healthy strains of bacteria in it. Now it's true that yogurt has some beneficial bacteria, but often it only has 1 or 2 strains of probiotics in it, when there are really hundreds in our stomach that we need to keep inoculating ourselves with. If you're buying your yogurt at the grocery store, it may be flavored and have lots of sugar in it, and the sugar will feed the bad bacteria and yeasts in your stomach, and so they usually end up negating good bacteria. If you're going to eat yogurt, eat whole plain yogurt, and you can sweeten it with a little bit of molasses, dates, or fruit, or you can try it savory, and you can add some lemon juice, a pinch of salt, and some mashed up cucumbers from your food processor. Don't rely on dairy or yogurt for a source of protein, calcium, probiotics. If you want to look into more probiotic foods, sauerkraut and kombucha are easy to make, and they have really high levels of probiotics in them. So I've just thrown a lot of information at you. The main takeaways are to eat lots of calories from whole foods, have healthy fats, drink water, and avoid simple carbs, simple sugars, and other inflammatory foods like pasteurized dairy and processed foods. And here's 3 really basic steps to help make it even more simple. Firstly, pick one simple change at a time. Imagine that each of these birds is a change you want to make, and you can see how one is singled out. That is your one change that you're going to work into your routine for 30 days. Willpower is like a muscle. The more you work it, the stronger it gets. But you wouldn't want to start with 50-pound weights on your first time working out. It's going to seem much harder than it actually is. What you really want to do is work up to that. Same thing with your changes. Taking too many changes on at once leads people to get overwhelmed and quit. So pick one simple change and focus on it for an entire month. It could be adding a glass of water when you wake up, or pouring out a couple sips of soda when you open it. And after 30 days, your first change is going to be a solid part of your habits. And you can add in another simple change while keeping the first one that you tried. Remember to give yourself some grace. If you totally screw it up for a day or a few days, it's okay. Give yourself credit for your efforts. And you know what? Catch that wagon. Hop right back on it and know that you can start again and keep going forward with your change. Keep working that willpower muscle. Next tip is to choose double duty items. Some of the foods I mentioned in this presentation do double duty, like sprouted almonds. Almonds are sources of protein, healthy fat, and calcium. Oh, calcium. That's triple duty. So you're actually hitting several nutritional needs by adding them into your routine. And lastly, write down your change. Write it down somewhere where you'll see it often. Maybe put it on your bathroom mirrors, or you can make a reminder on your phone for you. You can put it on your computer if you use a computer a lot for work. Write it in the present and write it in the positive. So an example of that would be, instead of writing, I want to stop drinking soda, write something like, I drink a glass of water between each meal. With time, you'll notice that your body actually starts craving that change. All of these changes are beneficial to be making during your pregnancy. But even if you're planning or recovering for pregnancy, most of these are good things to be thinking about and good habits to be getting in as you're preparing your body or recovering from pregnancy. Again, please let me know if you have any questions, if you'd like to be connected with people who can help you, or if you want to know more about those fruits and vegetables in a capsule. You can send an email to mora@stlbr.com. Here's hoping you have a happy and comfortable pregnancy.